The Monday morning conference room at Zenith Solutions was packed. About 30 people sat around the long table, waiting to hear presentations about our quarterly projects. I'd spent 3 weeks preparing mine. 3 weeks of late nights, research, data analysis, and design. 3 weeks of believing that hard work actually mattered. 3 weeks of sacrificing sleep and social time. I'd skipped my sister's birthday dinner. I'd canceled plans with friends. I'd missed my nephew's soccer game. My family had asked me why I was working so hard. I'd told them I wanted to prove myself. I'd wanted to make an impact. I was ready. My heart was pounding as I stood up to present. I got through exactly 2 slides before Victor Brennan, my boss, held up his hand. He laughed. Not a nice laugh. A dismissive one that made my stomach drop. It was a laugh that felt cruel. It was the kind of laugh that made everyone else in the room uncomfortable. "Let's be honest here," he said, turning to face the room like I wasn't even standing there. "This guy doesn't really add value here. I mean, look at this. It's mediocre at best." The room went completely silent. You could hear someone's pen drop. The silence was deafening. My face burned hot. My hands started shaking slightly. I could feel sweat forming on my palms. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke up in my defense. I looked around the room, at faces I recognized. People I'd worked with for years. People I'd helped on their projects. They were all staring at their papers or their coffee cups, avoiding my eyes. Some looked embarrassed for me. Victor smiled at his own joke like he'd just told the funniest thing anyone had ever heard. People around him chuckled nervously. "We'll discuss your future here," he added casually, not even looking at me. "But later. For now, we're giving this project to Allison. She'll handle it from here on out." Allison looked uncomfortable but nodded quickly, trying not to make eye contact with me. I sat down slowly, feeling like the floor was disappearing beneath my chair. Everyone stared at their papers or their coffee cups. My idea, the one I'd poured everything into, was gone. Just like that. Humiliated in front of the entire department. I realized something crucial in that moment. This wasn't random. This wasn't spontaneous. This was planned. This was calculated. This was intentional. After the meeting ended, I went back to my desk with a sick feeling in my stomach that wouldn't go away. I needed to understand what was happening. I checked the shared drive to see where my projects had been moved. Every single one had my name removed completely. Access revoked. Every file. I couldn't even view them anymore, let alone edit them. I tried to stay calm, but my hands were shaking as I typed. My computer screen seemed to blur. A co-worker named Trevor walked past my desk and deliberately didn't make eye contact. He'd been my friend. Or at least I thought he was. We'd had lunch together dozens of times. We'd talked about our families. We'd complained about work. Now he wouldn't even look at me. I felt betrayed. I caught another co-worker, someone I'd trained personally, whispering to someone else near the water cooler. I heard my name spoken quietly. Then I thought you knew it was happening. My stomach dropped into my shoes. I felt cold, dead inside. An email arrived in my inbox with an urgent notification. From Carol in HR, performance review scheduled. Mandatory attendance. Thursday, 2 p.m. 3 days away. Just 3 days. I read it and reread it multiple times, trying to understand what was happening. Something was definitely very wrong. And somehow, I was the only one who didn't see it coming. Everyone else seemed to know. Everyone else had been prepared for this except me. They'd all been waiting for the announcement. They'd all been ready. It felt like a conspiracy. Thursday came too fast. My alarm went off and I felt nauseous. I didn't eat breakfast. I could barely swallow. I walked into the HR office where Victor was already sitting comfortably with Carol. They had a file in front of them. A thick file that looked like it contained months of documentation. I wonder how long they'd been planning this. I wondered if they'd started this the day I was hired. I wondered if this was always their plan. Victor opened it and started reading a list of my failures with dramatic emphasis. Missed deadlines. Incomplete work. Projects that didn't meet company standards. Things I knew weren't true. My mind started racing through every project I'd worked on. Some of them were actually work I completed successfully and received positive feedback on. I had emails praising that work. I had performance reviews. Some of them were projects I'd never even worked on. I tried to defend myself, explaining what actually happened with each accusation. Carol didn't seem interested in my explanations. She just took notes in her notebook, without looking up. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Victor would interrupt me constantly, contradicting everything I said. "That's not how I remember it," he'd say dismissively. Or, That's not what your team told me." When I asked for specific examples or exact dates, they'd just move on to the next accusation without answering. By the end of the meeting, I was completely shaken and exhausted. Carol handed me a thick document. Performance Improvement Plan, it said in bold letters. 30 days to show improvement. "If you can't meet these standards," Carol said quietly in a way that sounded sympathetic, but wasn't, "we'll need to discuss next steps." I knew exactly what that meant. They were building a case to fire me. They had already decided. My fate was sealed. This was theater. This was all planned. The next morning at 9 a.m., I got a message on Slack. It was from Allison, the co-worker who'd taken my project. She asked if I could meet her for lunch. I was hesitant and suspicious, but I went anyway. I needed answers. Maybe she felt guilty. We sat in a quiet corner of a nearby deli, away from anyone who might see us together. Allison looked nervous, picking at her sandwich without really eating anything. Her fingers trembled slightly. "I need to tell you something," she said, looking around to make sure nobody was listening. "Victor told the whole team to document everything you do wrong. He said to keep records, take screenshots, no times. He said you were probably going to be let go, and he wanted everyone prepared in case you try to fight it." I felt cold. My own co-worker, someone I'd personally trained and mentored, was telling me they'd been instructed to build false evidence against me. I had shown her everything about the systems. I had spent hours teaching her how things worked. I had trusted her completely. I believed we were friends. "There's more," Allison continued, her voice dropping lower. She pulled out her phone and showed me an email. It was Victor pitching my idea to executives. My exact idea. The one he'd publicly rejected in the meeting in front of 30 people. But in the email, it was listed as his project, his innovation, his concept. He'd stolen it completely and claimed it as his own work. I stared at the screen, unable to speak. The betrayal was overwhelming. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Allison looked sorry, but sorry wasn't going to fix this. Sorry wasn't going to change anything. That night, I stayed late at the office. Everyone else had gone home. I sat at my desk in the quiet darkness, scrolling through my old project files on my computer. Years of work. Systems I'd built from scratch. Processes I'd created and perfected. Code I'd written line by line, debugging every error. Every success I'd achieved was sitting there in the shared drive. And now, my name was being erased from all of it systematically. The company was moving forward using my work, but acting like I'd never existed. I was angry. So angry that my hands were clenching into fists. So angry that I almost walked into Victor's office and quit right then and there. I almost just left and never came back. But something stopped me. A thought. A question that made me pause. I realized something strange when I looked through the file structure carefully. Some of my oldest projects, the ones from years ago, were still being used regularly. But not just used. Relied upon. Depended on. These weren't old projects that had been replaced with newer versions. These were active, current systems that the company ran every single day. I could see the usage logs. I could see the traffic. I could see how critical these systems were. I could see that my work was the foundation of everything. I started digging deeper into what I'd built over the years. The company's biggest client was TechCore Solutions. They handled massive amounts of data every single day. Millions of transactions. Billions of data points. And they used a system I'd created 5 years ago to process everything. Everything depended on it. The entire TechCore operation ran on my code. Every transaction. Every data point. Every calculation. I scrolled through the documentation carefully. Then I realized something that made my heart skip a beat. There was no documentation. No instruction manual. No technical guides. No backup system. No redundancy. Nobody else understood how it worked. Not a single other person in the company had the knowledge to operate it or fix it. The entire operation was completely dependent on something only I understood. And my boss had absolutely no idea. He didn't know that half of what made this company valuable to TechCore was built entirely by me. He didn't know that if that system went down, TechCore would lose millions of dollars every single day. This company was held up by something invisible, something only I could see. I was literally the only person who could fix it. That realization changed everything. Power had shifted, and Victor didn't even know it yet. I made a decision that night sitting at my desk in the darkness. I wouldn't fight back emotionally. I wouldn't argue or defend myself. I wouldn't try to convince anyone of my value. Instead, I would let them collapse. Let them fail without me. I'd show them, not with words, but with absence, exactly how much they needed me. It would be the most powerful statement I could make. It would be undeniable. I started doing something different at work. I quietly began documenting everything I'd built over the years. Not for them, for me. Every system, every process, every decision I'd made and why. I created detailed notes about how everything worked. Technical guides, step-by-step instructions, backup procedures, security protocols, troubleshooting guides. I backed it all up to an external drive that I took home every single night. I wasn't going to sabotage anything. I was too professional for that. I was just going to be ready. Because I knew what was coming. I could feel it in my bones. This was my insurance policy. This was my protection. This was my evidence. Within the week, I updated my resume and reached out to people I knew in the industry. I emailed Catherine Price at Apex Digital, the biggest competitor to Zenith Solutions. Catherine responded within an hour. Would love to talk, she wrote. I also reached out to 3 other companies. By Friday, I had 3 interview invitations. By the following Monday, Catherine had scheduled me for an in-person interview. She sounded excited on the phone. Very excited about meeting me. She heard about my reputation in the industry. I went into the interview confident and prepared. During the conversation, I casually mentioned that I'd built systems my current company relied on. I mentioned TechCore specifically. I didn't give away too many details yet. Catherine leaned forward with sudden interest. Wait, she said. You mean the TechCore system? The one that Zenith just announced to the public? The one they're claiming is their competitive advantage. She looked stunned. That's you. I nodded. That's me. She was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Then she smiled widely. Her interest had intensified. Systems started failing at Zenith. Small glitches at first. A database query that took longer than usual. A report that didn't generate properly on the first try. A backup that skipped a step in the process. Nothing catastrophic. Nothing that would destroy anything. Just small issues that were frustrating. People started asking me for help. Hey, the system's acting weird again, they'd say, coming to my desk. I'd respond politely and professionally, but I'd respond slowly. I'd ask questions that took time to answer. I'd take my time investigating. I wasn't breaking anything. I wasn't sabotaging. I was just not rushing to fix it. My boss got frustrated. He'd snap at me in meetings. Why are you suddenly struggling with this? You built it. I'd just shrug and say I was overwhelmed with the performance improvement plan. I was trying my best. I was doing everything I could. He couldn't argue with that. It was the truth. But what he didn't realize was that every delay, every slow response, was costing the company money and client trust. Every hour the system was slow was another hour TechCore was considering leaving. Every glitch was pushing them closer to switching providers. At my interview with Catherine, I went into detail about everything. I explained how the TechCore system worked. I explained what made it special and valuable. I explained how dependent the company was on it. I told her about the lack of documentation and backup systems. Catherine's face got more and more interested as I talked. She was leaning forward, taking notes. She understood the implications immediately. We've been trying to replicate that system for 2 years, she said. We didn't know who built it. We didn't even know it was possible until we saw what you'd created. I leaned back in my chair. Well, now you do. Catherine stood up and extended her hand to shake mine. Let's talk salary, she said with a smile. I felt relief wash over me. Finally, someone who understood my value. Finally, someone who saw me clearly. Someone who wanted me for the right reasons. Catherine's offer was incredible and exceeded my expectations. 50% more than I was making at Zenith. A better title. A real team to lead. Creative control. A chance to build new systems from scratch. The offer letter came that Friday. I read it carefully, word by word. Everything was perfect. Better than I'd imagined. But I didn't sign it immediately. Instead, I emailed Catherine back. I'm very interested, I wrote. But I need to set a start date for exactly 1 week after my performance improvement plan ends. I want my current employer to think they've succeeded in breaking me and that I'm leaving quietly. There was a pause. Then Catherine replied, I like how you think. You're strategic. Start date, June 15th. That works perfectly for us. We had a plan. A perfect plan. A plan that would teach them a lesson they'd never forget. A plan that would show them the true cost of their betrayal. The pressure at work intensified dramatically. Victor started having daily check-ins with me. Public criticism in meetings. Micromanagement of every task. He'd question every decision I made. He'd asked me to explain my work in front of others, trying to make me look incompetent and lost. But behind the scenes, the tech core system started failing more frequently. Victor tried to fix it himself. He'd spend hours staring at code he didn't understand. He'd make changes, and then things would get worse. Much worse. I'd watch from my desk, saying nothing. His desperation was visible. His confidence was cracking. The cracks were showing. Then one morning I got a call. It was someone from TechCore. Their voice was stressed and angry. "We're experiencing significant downtime," they said. "We need this fixed within 6 hours, or we're pulling our contract." 6 hours. That was the deadline. That was the moment of truth. Everything was coming to a head. I started looking through old emails systematically. I found conversations between Victor and the executives. Emails where Victor explicitly claimed he'd built the TechCore system himself. Emails where he presented my work as his own innovation. But there was something else. Something worse. There were emails where he discussed phasing me out once the system was fully transferred to the team. Emails dated from months ago. Time-stamped and dated clearly. Undeniable proof. In one email, he literally wrote, "Once we take over his work and understand it completely, we can let him go. He'll be completely redundant." I felt my blood run cold reading that. I wondered if anyone else had seen these emails. I printed them all. Hundreds of pages. I put them in a folder. I labeled it carefully. Then I locked it in my desk drawer at home. I also made copies and hid them in 3 different locations. I was prepared for everything. I had a backup plan for my backup plan. I accepted Catherine's offer officially. My start date was June 15th. My performance improvement plan ended on June 8th. Everything was perfectly timed. I gave myself exactly 1 week. 1 week where Victor would think he was winning. 1 week where the company would feel like they were getting rid of the problem. And then, right when they thought they'd succeeded, I was going to disappear. I scheduled my resignation for June 7th. I was going to submit it at the end of the day, right after my final performance review meeting. The timing would be perfect. My revenge would be complete. Justice would be served. The scales would finally balance. The TechCore system crashed again. This time, much worse than before. Victor tried everything he could think of. He called emergency meetings at midnight. He pulled people from other projects to help. He personally worked through the night, tried to solve the problem himself. Nothing worked. The system was completely down for 8 hours. Complete 8 hours of darkness. Clients couldn't process transactions. TechCore lost millions in revenue during those hours. The money was gone. The opportunity was lost. I watched from home as messages flooded the company's Slack channel. People were panicking. Victor was frantic. He was sending messages every few minutes. He was calling developers. He was calling people in the middle of the night. He was trying everything. Emails were flying back and forth. The situation was spiraling out of control. The chaos was complete. TechCore threatened to terminate their contract immediately. They said they'd never use Zenith Solutions again. They said they were looking for a new provider right away. Replacements were already being contacted. Other companies were already pitching. Victor's face turned completely white when he finally came to the office the next morning. He looked like he might get sick. He was visibly shaking. He was sweating profusely. His hands were trembling. I watched him panic from my desk. And I said nothing. I simply watched. It was satisfying in a way I hadn't expected. Seeing him panic. Seeing him finally understand. The weight of what he'd done was crushing him. The realization was hitting hard. The consequences were real. In a company-wide call, Victor blamed me in front of everyone. He told everyone that the system was failing because I hadn't built it with proper backup systems. He said I designed it poorly. He said I'd cut corners to save time. He was lying. I sat silently during the call. I didn't defend myself. I didn't interrupt. I just listened. I let him dig his own grave. Then the head of operations asked me directly. "Garrett," she said, "is that true? Did you design the system without proper backups?" Everyone on the call was listening. Victor was watching me, his face confident again. I took a deep breath. "I'd be happy to clarify," I said calmly. "And I have full documentation to back everything up. Maybe we should schedule a formal review." The silence that followed was deafening. People were leaning in, waiting to hear more. Victor's face went pale again. He knew. He knew I had something. Something damaging. Something that would expose him completely. I could see it in his eyes. The realization. The fear. The moment everything changed. His world was collapsing. I could see Victor's confidence crack. Just a little. But it cracked. He knew I had something. Something he hadn't counted on. Something he didn't know about. The executives said they wanted to see everything. They scheduled a meeting for June 6th, the day before my resignation. Bring all your documentation, they said. We need to understand exactly what happened. Victor tried to pull me aside after the call. Don't do anything stupid, he said quietly in a voice that was shaking. We can work this out. But I just smiled. I said, I'll see you at the meeting. His desperation was showing now. He was panicking. He knew he was trapped. He knew there was no way out. He'd painted himself into a corner. All his lies were about to come crashing down. The evidence was overwhelming. The timeline was clear. The emails were damaging. The recordings were devastating. He'd done this to himself. His own greed had destroyed him. June 7th, the day of my resignation. The day before the meeting with executives. I walked into the office, and I could feel the tension everywhere. People were nervous. There were rumors about the tech core system. Rumors about what might happen. Rumors about job security. Rumors about Victor. Rumors about me. Victor kept trying to catch my eye, but I avoided him. At the end of the day, I walked into Carol's office with a resignation letter. One sentence. Effective immediately, I am resigning from my position. Carol's face went pale. What? Why? This is so sudden. I just handed her the letter and left. Within an hour, panic spread through the company. Victor tried to find me. He sent me messages. He called. He emailed repeatedly. We need to talk, he said. Please. Let's fix this. I ignored every single message. My phone buzzed constantly, but I didn't respond. I didn't look at them. I was done. I'd made my decision. Nothing he could say would change my mind now. The die was cast. The game was over. Victor finally cornered me the next morning before the executives' meeting. We went into an empty conference room. He was completely different now. The confidence was gone. He was nervous, apologetic, desperate. He was sweating through his shirt. His voice was shaking. His hands were trembling. I'm sorry, he said. I shouldn't have treated you that way. I made terrible mistakes. We can fix this. What do you want? A promotion? More money? Your project's back? A title change? Name it. I could see he finally understood. He finally realized how much power I actually had. But it was too late. I've already resigned, I said. As of yesterday. His face fell. When? When do you leave? Today, I said. I'm clearing out my desk now. He stood up abruptly. Wait. The executives. They have all your documents. They're reviewing everything right now. They're going to figure out. Exactly, I said. His face went gray. He understood now. It was over. Everything he'd built was collapsing. His career was ending. The meeting with executives was at 10 a.m. in the boardroom. I was there in my best suit. So was Victor. So was Carol. I presented everything carefully. Original files with dates. Time-stamped emails showing the pattern. Screenshots of my work. Documentation showing what I'd built. Documentation showing what Victor had claimed. Timelines that proved everything clearly. The executives' faces changed as they looked at it. They looked angry, shocked, disappointed. Victor tried to interrupt. He tried to explain. But his explanations didn't match the evidence. The documentation was clear. The timeline was undeniable. The emails showed everything. Then I revealed one more thing. I have one more document, I said. I pulled out a USB drive. This is a recording. The room went quiet. You could hear breathing. Everyone was waiting, anticipating, ready for the final blow. The moment of truth had arrived. I played the recording for everyone. It was from a meeting between Victor and another manager from 3 months ago. In the recording, Victor said it clearly. We'll phase him out after we take his work. Once we fully understand his systems, we don't need him anymore. Then we can let him go and save his salary. The room went absolutely silent. You could hear a pin drop. HR's expression said everything. The head of operations stood up. This is a recorded meeting, she said. Where did you get this? I recorded it, I said calmly. It was a team meeting. I was there. I had every right to record it. They couldn't argue with me. Victor's face went gray. He started talking really fast, trying to explain, trying to defend himself desperately. But nobody was listening. Everyone was staring at him. The looks on their faces were cold, furious, betrayed. Security was already walking toward him. His fate was sealed. He was done. His career was finished. Victor was asked to leave the meeting. Right then, security walked with him. He tried to argue. He tried to explain. But they were already walking him toward the exit. I watched him go without looking back. Carol looked shocked. The executives looked furious and disappointed. They explained that they were launching an immediate investigation. They said Victor's position was terminated effective immediately. They said there would be legal consequences for misrepresenting work and fraud. They said he would be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. They said they were contacting lawyers. They asked if I would reconsider my resignation. The company needs you, they said. We need your expertise. We need your knowledge. We can't survive without you. But I already had a new job. I already had a better opportunity waiting. I'd already made my choice. Nothing they could offer would change that. My mind was made up. I was done with this place. I was moving on to something better. Something where I'd be valued. But they didn't give up easily. Over the next few days, executives kept reaching out constantly. They offered me anything I could imagine. A huge raise. A VP position. A team of 50 people reporting to me. Equity in the company. Stock options. Bonuses. Company car. Executive benefits. They said they'd fix everything. They said I was the most valuable person in the company. They said I'd been wrong to resign. I listened politely to each offer. But I kept saying no. Thank you, I'd say. But I've already committed to another opportunity. I'm excited about my future there. They couldn't understand why I wouldn't stay and take advantage. But I understood perfectly. Money isn't everything. Respect is. Trust is. And they'd given me neither. They'd shown me exactly who they were. They'd proven they were disloyal. I didn't want to work for people like that. I didn't want to spend my career in a place that didn't value me. I wanted to work for people who saw my worth. Weeks later, I heard the news that made everything worthwhile. TechCore ended their contract with Zenith Solutions permanently. They moved to Apex Digital, my new company. They specifically requested that I lead their account. They only wanted to work with me. They told Apex Digital that I was the only reason they were switching. Apex Digital won the biggest contract in our industry history because of me. The contract was worth $50 million. $50 million. The largest contract in company history. Zenith Solutions was falling apart without me. Victor had been completely fired, not just removed from his position. He was being sued for breach of fiduciary duty. Allison, the co-worker who'd betrayed me, had also been let go in the investigation. The company discovered she'd been part of the scheme to document false problems and fabricate evidence. The company that once said I had no value was now collapsing. Their stock price dropped 30% in 1 month. Massive layoffs were coming. Hundreds of people would lose their jobs. Victor was being sued for fraud. His career was over. His reputation was destroyed. He'd never work in technology again. Nobody would hire him. In my new office at Apex Digital, I led the TechCore project. The exact same project that Victor had mocked. The exact same idea he'd said was mediocre and worthless. I was building it bigger and better than anything Zenith could have done. The system was revolutionary. I had a team of 20 brilliant people. We had unlimited resources. We had support from leadership. We were creating something amazing. Something that would change the industry. Something that would be remembered. One day I got a message. It was from Victor. I'm sorry for everything, it said. The company's in real trouble. We could really use your help. Would you ever consider coming back as a consultant? I read the message carefully. Then I left it on read. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. My absence had already taught them everything they needed to know. I'd proven my value not with words, but with evidence. Turns out, I had more value than they ever imagined. Way more. And now, I was building incredible things, far away from people who couldn't see it. My success spoke louder than any words could. Garrett Hayes didn't need their validation anymore. I never would again. I was free. I was happy. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. My future was bright.